579 Yada Yahowah. Shanah, years. 12. Nathan, the gift. Upon his shoulders. It has not been difficult to see David as the one man capable of fulfilling all these prophecies. But there is another prophecy universally stolen from him. So now, turning back to Yasha'yah, let's consider the soaring rhetoric in the 9th chapter to determine who is being offered and predicted. Blinded by the waning legacy of a now discarded religion, once upon a time that seems like forever ago, I misidentified the object of these prophecies. It was not until correctly assessing Samuel, 2 Samuel 7 that the identity of this most important individual became irrefutably known, begging to be accepted, appreciated, and announced on behalf of a people in dire need of a shepherd and savior. This realization is so essential that it became the impetus for the comprehensive rewrite and rebranding of the 25 volumes of Yada Yahowah, an endeavor that would require 3 years' time and a family to fulfill. And even then, there was more to add, requiring yet another edit a year later. Daud was more than the Messiah and Son of God, he is the Zarahua, sacrificial lamb and savior. Knowing the identity, character, and purpose of the individual being addressed in Devarim 18, 2 Samuel 7, Yasha'yah 9, Daniel 9, and Mizmor 22, 88, and 89 is as essential to our relationship with Yahowah as are his depictions of the Berith and Mikre. 580 I say this because failing to appreciate what God has predicted has not only severed the relationship between the Almighty and Israel, but it has also given rise to the religions most opposed to Yahweh. Islam would claim Devarim 18 on behalf of Muhammad and Christianity Yasha'yah 9 for their Christ. All the while, the rabbis would remain oblivious to the obvious, giving the Messiah's adversaries the upper hand. In the interim, between the time Devarim 18, 2 Samuel 7, Yasha'yah 9, and Daniel 9 were scribed, 2,500 to 3,500 years ago, there is no record of anyone explaining how and why they all point to the multiple arrivals of the past and future king of Israel. And so that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past, let's approach the Yasha'yah, Isaiah 9 by examining what the prophet presented in the testimony leading up to it. Yahowah, Yahowah, expressed to me with unfolding implications, Wa'amar eleni, obtain for yourself, Lakak La'ata, a very large vellum scroll to make this widely known, Gileam Gadol, a mirror to uncover and reveal what is important and should be obvious. Choose to write with a stylus in the common characters associated with mortal man, Wakatab al-Hubar Chere Inaush, La Maharshalal Chopshbaz, concerning senselessly and impetuously being prepared, almost eager, to be looted and controlled by the treachery of this despicable conflict, Mahar, the aggressive and moronic, the rash and disturbing, rapidly approaching non-existence, Shalal, of being seized, victimized, and spoiled, ransacked and robbed, Chopsh, hastening the process, being prepared. And coming to relish, being ready, Baz, to be stolen as prey in the contemptible battle, scattered and dispersed. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:1. We should be celebrating the fact that Yahowah asked his prophets to record his revelations to them in writing. 581 inches this way, even today, it is as if we were there, listening right along with Yasha'yah. We should also appreciate that God invented the Hebrew alphabet, with its pictorial letters, for this purpose, so that we would be able to discern what he conveyed so long ago. And in this regard, almost every letter was drawn to either depict mortal man or to show something useful to us. The Gimel is a foot, the Hay is a person, the Yod and Kaf are hands, the Ain is an eye, the Pei a mouth, while the Zad and Rosh depict observant individuals, and the Shin was drawn to show our teeth. The Baith is a home, the Dolet a doorway, the Wa a tent peg, the Zayin a plough, the Chet is a wall, the Thith a basket, the Lamed is a staff, the Mem is water, the Nun is a seed, the Samek a sign, the Kof is the light of a new day, while the Torah represents God's signature. Of the 22 letters, this leaves only the Aleph, which has the head of a ram, a male lamb, represents Yahowah, our God and Father. Properly translating the meaning of La Maharshalal Chubshbaz requires some thought because several of the words convey somewhat similar ideas. Nonetheless, the sentiment is clear. From God's perspective, his people have been so senseless and impetuous, so moronic and rash, they have become willing accomplices in their own demise. They have made themselves susceptible to being controlled and robbed as a result of their shameful and treacherous conflict with Yahowah. Yes, God predicted that his people would be victimized, ransacked, and dispersed, but also that they would hasten their degradation. I will sustain a witness to testify for me, Yudla I will call upon and assist an observant future herald to reiterate, admonish, and restore on my behalf, whose pronouncements are consistent with the evidence and logical, meticulous and reliable, ed, whose 582 restoring and enduring witness is repeatedly, trustworthy and dependable, a man, verifiable and true, credible and steadfast, consistent with, Uriah, Yahowah's enlightenment, Uriah, the light provided by Yahowah. who functions as a counselor and advisor, Ha-Kohen, whose purpose is to explain the Mikra and encourage participation by serving the people, so as to Zachariah, remember Zachariah, to remind and to think about Yahowah, as a child Yahweh, blessed by Yahowah, ben Yahweh, as the offspring and son Yahowah lifts up and adores. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:2. Yahowah wants men and women to serve as witnesses, sharing his testimony with all who will listen. And he is willing to help, assisting and sustaining the observant herald who strives to reiterate what his prophets have revealed. Pronouncements made on behalf of the enduring and restoring testimony of Yahowah are expected to be logical, thorough, and reliable, consistent with the inspiration behind them. And God's message should be presented in a credible and verifiable manner by one who strives to be trustworthy and dependable, once again, like the God such men and women are representing. Since Uriah Ha-Kohen, Uriah the priest was a despicable fellow who built a pagan altar for King Ahaz modeled after one he had seen in Damascus, Yahowah is using this name and position to affirm that his witnesses will convey a message which is consistent with the enlightenment he is providing. Further, he or she will function in the role of a Kohen, which is to be a counselor and advisor to the people, especially with regard to benefiting from the mode Mikra. Should Zachariah ben Yahweh be intended as a positive reference, then he is the Zechariah who 583 worked with Hezekiah to remove pagan artifacts from Yahowah's home prior to celebrating Chag Matzah. While we were only given his first name, that story is presented in 2 Chronicles 29. Otherwise, the meaning of Zechariah, remember Yahowah, is all that matters. And in this regard, since there is no capitalization in Hebrew to distinguish proper names from ordinary words, translation is almost always an option. And speaking of possibilities, Uriah Ha-Kohen and Zachariah ben Yahweh may also represent Yahowah's final witnesses. Eliah was the light of Yahowah in a religious Israel. And the second of the 2 witnesses is most adroitly presented in the 4th chapter of Zechariah. As we press on to the next statement, we cannot positively identify the prophetess of whom Yasha'yah is speaking, although she is likely a spokesperson for a religious cult. Adding further intrigue, Nabi was scribed in the masculine rather than the feminine in 1 Kesser. Nonetheless, since Yahowah has been criticizing the religious for having become so misled that they are now Maharshalal Chokshbaz, the product of her womb is clearly the consequence of religion. Although, based on the wording, Yahowah may have asked Yasha'yah to marry a temple prostitute, as he had with Husha, so that he might better appreciate why he was so disappointed with his people. And so, I approached, Karab, I came near, the prophetess, El-Ha-Nabiah, the woman who claimed to speak for God. Nabi is masculine in 1 Kesser, and she conceived, Wahara, she became pregnant over the course of time, Kalim perfect, and gave birth to a son, Yalod ben, she delivered a baby boy. Then, Yahowah, said, Amar, to me, Eleni, call his name, Kara Shem-Hu, issue a 584 summons by proclaiming his name, Maharshalal Chokshbaz, so senselessly impetuous he will be complicit in his victimization, being controlled and looted by the treacherous in this despicable conflict, moronic, rash, and disturbing, rapidly approaching non-existence, Shalal, of being seized, spoiled, ransacked and robbed, Choksh, hastening the process, Baz of being scattered and dispersed, Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:3. Because before, Ky bar Terim, in that prior to, the boy, Hana, the lad, the scattered sheep who are in danger, knows how, Yada, recognizes how, to call out, Kara, to summon, greet, or proclaim, my father, Abeni, or, my mother, Ameni, while 1 Kesser reads his father and his mother the mount appears more appropriate, the political prowess, military strength, and economic wealth, Eth-Chale, the troops and capacity to function, of Damascus, Damesuk, weeping wounds, mourning and sorrow, even sacks of blood, or body bags, along with the plunder and spoils, Shalal, the war booty, property, and prey, of Shimron, Samaria, Shimron, the observant, will be carried away, Nasa, will be removed, before the presence, Larpana, of the king, Melech, dictator and sovereign ruler, of Ashur, Assyria, Ashur, to fight and conquer in the name of Ashur, a warrior god symbolized as an archer with a winged disc. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:4. Yahowah is predicting that the Assyrians would soon plunder Damascus en route to sacking Samaria, hastening to quickly seize the booty. However, a slightly different fate would await Samaria. While both would be plundered, Damascus would remain inhabitable, albeit denuded of her chale, political prowess, military strength, and economic wealth. By contrast, Samaria would be treated as Shalal, prey to spoil, as a possession, and as war booty. Her people would be taken away as property. 585 All of this would occur before the aptly named and wayward child would be willing to so much as acknowledge his spiritual mother or heavenly father. Bad things happen when we engage with the wrong people or believe that we can survive on our own. But that is not the end of the story. In the 17th chapter of Yasha'yah, the fall of Damascus becomes the triggering event for World War III. Without Russian support, the Syrian government will fall, and the jihadists who replace Bashar al-Assad will send millions of Islamic jihadists into Israel to kill Jews for Allah. With Russia and China currently supporting Iran's growing influence in the region after the US gifted Iraq to the theocracy of Iran, and Europe and the Americans sponsoring the Sunnis, led by Saudi Arabia, the region is the powder keg that will ignite a nuclear conflagration. This will be the triggering point for the time of Jacob's troubles, the Towrah harvest, and the arrival of the two witnesses. Yahowah said that his people would look and yet not understand. This problem has become so ubiquitous, so obvious, that it is demonstrated every day in the media, by the political and religious. Few among us are observant and rational, and with the advent of progressives, cognizant abilities are deteriorating rapidly. As a case in point, Yahowah's next statement is long, with a singular sentence conveying considerable symbolic language. Its overall length and prolific use of metaphors, which draw elucidation elsewhere in the text, are now well beyond the capacity of most of us to understand. Yet again, YYV, joining these things together, adding more information, Yahowah, spoke, the bar, to me, LNE, continuing to testify, Yud, providing an eternal witness which restores and sustains and while admonishing and warning others regarding unfavorable and dangerous future events, Yasha'yah, 586 Isaiah 8-5, to say, La'amar, to declare, indeed, KY, because, Yan, these people, Han Haze, will reject and come to spurn, Mas, will avoid, refusing an association with their aversion to the waters, Ethmaim, that which is essential to all life, and that which serves as the universal solvent and thus cleansing properties, Hashiloach, of the one who is sent, Hashiloach, the dispatched, from Shalach, to stretch out and send, to extend and go forth, who walks, Ha-Holach, whose journey, as a gentleman, moving deliberately and compassionately, La'at, showing consideration for those facing a potentially violent situation. Moving in a comforting manner, showing some humility and patience, while also, launching a scathing attack against, Masos Eth, Ritzin, the self-willed and pleasure-seeking, Ritzin, and, Ven Ramaliawu, those exalted above Yahowah, Ven Ramaliawu, Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:6. Therefore, while Aken, behold, Hine, Yahowah, Almighty God, Elohim, is withdrawing, and he is lifting up, Allah, is moving away and sending, offering up, against them, Alhem, accordingly, Eth, the waters, Maim, of a powerful torrent. Ha-na-ha-ha, Sum, in addition to, the numerous soldiers, Rab, of the political leader and dictator, Eth-Melech, of Ashur, Assyria, Ashur, along with, the entire, Eth-Shurl, manifestation of its power, Kabut-Hu, and it will rise, Allah, over all of its channels, Al-Shurl Afik-Hu, and, travel, Holach, over all, Al-Shurl, its banks, Garda-Hu. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:7. Yahowah is meticulous and thorough, and for good reason. Repetition is the most effective way to teach those who are anxious to learn. God is also exceedingly fond of metaphors, of drawing pictures with words, while also using people and places in our past, to elucidate future 587 events. Even the names of individuals speak more about what is occurring. The people would reject and spurn the essential life-giving waters of Shiloach, the one who is sent. And indeed, whether one identifies Shiloach with Yahowah's liberator, Moses, his shepherd, and Messiah, our Savior, Daud, his prophet, Yasha'yah, or his final witness, Yada, they were all dispatched with the living and cleansing waters of Yah, our God who walks light, gently and approaches mercifully. Representing our Father, Yahowah's witnesses are typically light, gentlemen. They are often charming, always patient, and their words consistently comfort the covenant's children. They are never in a hurry, knowing that we have a lifetime to share Yahowah's mercy. Masos Eth cannot be rendered as delights in as is typical in English Bibles because those being identified were horrible people. Therefore, the proper translation is launching a scathing attack against Ritzin, the self-willed and pleasure-seeking, and Ben Ramaliawu, those exalted above Yahowah. Today, we could substitute rabbis for both names and properly convey Yahowah's intent. Back in time, the northern kingdom allied with Ritzin, the self-willed and pleasure-seeking, and Ben Ramaliawu, the one exalted above Yahowah. Nothing has changed. Men are still choosing their ilk over God. Yahowah was using the impending Syrian invasion of Israel to foretell a second incursion during our lifetimes, something which becomes obvious when we interpret the prophet's words in the 8th chapter against what he wrote in the 17th chapter using similar terminology. After the fall of Damascus, which will occur sometime prior to 2030, a Tsum, powerful torrent of Islamic soldiers and 588 militants will flood into Israel from Syria, so many that Yahowah will have to intervene to stem the tide. And, it will sweep through, it will go past in such a way as to alter, Yahweh, those related to Yah who are beloved of Yah, exerting the considerable force of a flood, Shataf, engulfing and overflowing, while, extending up to, passing over until reaching, the neck, the throat, from the hostile confines in adversarial fashion seeking to besiege, making contact with and violently striking, Naga, touching and plaguing, while, coming to, higher, stretch out, Mutar. Spread out, its wings can a few filling mallow, a multitude crowding into, the breadth, Roshab, of your land, Erezota, so that Emmanuel, God is with us, Emmanuel, with us is God. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:8. After capturing Israel and taking 10 of the 12 tribes away as slaves, the Assyrians returned, flooding into Yahudah with a large army. But as the prophecy predicts, Yahowah would intervene to save his beloved. At that time, all that was required of Yahudim, Jews, was to embrace the conditions of the covenant and accept Yahowah's invitations to be called out and meet. This is also what will be required of them a few years from now under very similar circumstances. Flooding in from Syria, Islamic militaries and militants will so overwhelm Israeli defenses that Yahowah will intervene to assure that his covenant family survives the onslaught. And that makes this pronouncement, like the previous, a prophecy with a near and far fulfillment, with a demonstrable historical event serving as a harbinger of what is to come. Israel's politicians and her rabbis are corrupt, self-serving, and misleading. And while unethical leaders are a common denominator among nations today, Israel is 589 unique among the Western democracies. There is a constant struggle between the secular and sectarian, where an awkward and counterproductive power-sharing arrangement exists between religious fundamentalists, conservative, and progressive politicians within an ill-fitting and bribe-prone parliamentary system. For Yahowah to save his people, both the secular and sectarian must be rejected. People, by having decided to associate yourselves with misleading shepherds and perverted rulers, by you continually electing to form an association with errant and disingenuous leaders, and actually befriending harmful and destructive associates, imperative, you have chosen to be confused and divided, terrorized and scattered, you have consistently decided your own fate, which is to be genuinely intimidated, bewildered, and dismayed, separated and shattered, imperative. So by choosing to listen and respond to, by you electing to hear and heed, choosing to give an ear to, imperative, by choosing to actively respond to what you hear, and engaging based upon it, you will become like those you are listening to, every, distant land and far-off country, Merchik Erez, estranged and alienated place, you are asking for war, and must independently arm yourself for your defense, you are independently choosing to gird yourself for an impending battle. Electing of your own accord to strengthen your army while binding others as part of your military preparations, imperative, and you will have chosen your own fate, which is to be terrorized and bewildered, divided and broken, thereby you will have elected to be confused and discouraged, choosing of your own accord to be separated and splintered, intimidated and shattered, imperative. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:9. 590. By expressing their allegiance to misguided and immoral religious or political leaders, Israel has estranged herself from Yahowah. Separated, the people will continue to be abused, intimidated, and shattered. The alternative was to have been enriched, enlightened, and empowered by God through the covenant, with their Father protecting them. But why would we expect Jews to choose the easy road considering their history? Israel, more than any other nation, is preoccupied with the opinions of other nations, particularly the distant land across two seas. But by trying to garner favor and respect, Israel has made itself vulnerable to the diabolical demands placed upon the nation. In particular, consider how the United Nations has been commandeered by leftists and Muslims to serve as the world's most irrational and hypocritical anti-Semitic voice. In response, Yahowah is warning his people that by doing so they are asking for war. Estranged from him, they will be left to defend themselves. But a time will come when their preparations for battle will be ineffective. The nation will be divided, intimidated, and then overwhelmed by the sheer number of militants and terrorists. You may want to devise your schemes, you can choose to plan your course of action in consideration of your own inclinations, aware of the ongoing consequences. Cal imperative, based upon the revolting advice and counsel of others. 8 Sar, predicated upon the religious schemes of those who are openly defiant, winking as they promote their malicious ideas. But, Wah, it will be nullified because you have chosen to be in violation of the covenant. Para, it will be thwarted and revoked. Failing because it is invalid, breaking the terms of the relationship agreement. Hoffel imperfect. Choose to make your pronouncements and state your claims. Dabar, with free will, you may opt to 591 be verbose, uttering a great many words, saying many things. Peel imperative active, the people making this statement are impacted by it and receive the consequence of it as a result of the choices they have made. But, Wah, none of it will stand. Lo cum, it will not be affirmed, come to fruition, or be accomplished. Cal imperfect, because truly, ky, Emmanuel, God is with us. Emmanuel. God is near and desires a relationship with us, from with, among, and near, anaku, us, God, written as one word in one kesser rather than 3 in the mount. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:10. Man's schemes are compelling, but they will all be thwarted by God. Religious words are spellbinding, but they are invalid. Weapons are powerful, but they will not prevail, because Emmanuel, God is with us. For indeed, ky, this is what, Yahowah, said, Amar, to me, Eleni, in a manner akin to, Ka, a strong and strengthening, Cheska, an empowering and renewing, hand, Yod, by way of an active influence and outreach, thereby teaching me so that I would be correct, Yasha'yah, guiding me and instructing me, admonishing me so that I would recognize the importance of being right, Kal imperfect, thereby keeping me from walking, Min holok, so that I avoid going, staying away from traveling through life. Kal infinitive, in the ways, Bar Derek, of these particular people, Han Haze, of individuals such as these by saying, La Ma, Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:11. I do not want you to continually or consistently speak of, Lo Amar, I am opposed to you making a habit of claiming or declaring, even designating something as or responding to, Kal imperfect paragogic none. The intent is for us to view this warning literally, recognizing that there is a problem with consistently and aggressively promoting, conspiracies, kesha, covert plans to carry out illegal or harmful acts as part of an alliance, conscious 592 and planned defiance of government, treason, from kashar. To associate for a political or religious purpose, conspiring to spellbind others, controlling them through deceitful means, tying things together in a scripted fashion to advance a political agenda. 4. La, because in this regard, everything or anything, shirl, which by association, Asher, the people, Ha-am, related individuals with common interests, continue to claim, Amar, call and say, promise and declare. Designate and propose on an ongoing basis actually, Kal imperfect, that this is a conspiracy, Haze Kesha, this is a secret plot and reflects the covert plans of a group to carry out illegal and harmful acts, a conscious and collective, clandestine and counterproductive, plot to harm and control others. And in addition, Wa'eth, do not respect or revel in, Lo, show no regard for, that which concerns them, Arats, that which they regard and believe has the propensity to prevail, terrorize, inspire, or oppress, wondering about or fearing them, Morahulo, dreading them or being anxious about them, do not be alarmed or terrorized by them, and do not respect them. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:12. God is opposed to us commingling his testimony with conspiratorial myths, regardless if they are religious, societal, or political. He does not want anyone using his good name and revelations to infer that the conspiracies are credible. The validity of what he has to say is degraded when surrounded by such stupidity. In other words, if you want to promote conspiracy theories, refrain from speaking about God. If you want to converse with Yahowah, do not pursue conspiracy. With regard to, Yahowah, of the spiritual implements, Zaba, him, Hu, you should set apart, Kadash, you should treat as special and not include him in anything which is profane or mundane such as religion and politics, patriotism and conspiracy. 593 and, him, Hu, you should wonder about, be in awe of, and respect, Mora Atom. And, him, Hu, you should be concerned about and inspired by, Aretz Atom, you should be impressed by and be aware that he has the propensity to prevail, Hyphal active. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:13. Words like Mora and Aretz are similar to Yer, such that they convey reverence or fear, respect or dread, inspiration or anxiety, depending upon the individual's perspective and circumstance. Those who come to know and respect Yahowah revere him, and are inspired by him. While those who reject him, preferring conspiracy, religion, or politics, will ultimately come to dread the consequence of being judged by him. Simply stated, respect him or fear him. Yahweh's words serve us or they work against us depending upon our response to them. The Torah provides the means to participate in the covenant for those who accept them, but for those who reject his testimony, God will cite his Torah to judge them, particularly Jews who have had it available to them in their native tongue for the longest time. So then, he will become higher, as a sanctuary, La Mikdash, a tabernacle and set-apart place, from Kadash, to be set apart from that which is common. But he will also be as a stone, La'aban, for smiting, Negef, for striking and dashing, and, as a rock, Larcher, as a hostile implement designed to lay siege, for stumbling, Mikshal, as an obstacle and for a downfall, for both, Shanaim, houses, Beithi, households of Israel, individuals who struggle with God. There is a trap, La Pok, as a dreadful calamity, and, as a snare, Mokesh, as a means of entrapment, for the inhabitants, La Yashab, of Yahushalem, source of guidance on reconciliation. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:14. 594 And then, many, Rabbim, shall stumble, Kashal, they will falter and fail, be overthrown and suffer, upon them, Barhem, and fall, Nafal, go from a higher position to a lower one, Kal perfect. They will be captured, naked, they will be caught and seized, broken, Shabbat, mauled, shattered, demolished, Nefal perfect, and controlled by others, Yakosh, lured into a trap, snared, and ruled by outsiders. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:15 In part, Israel would be ruled by others for the next 2,700 years. Their overlords would include the Assyrians, Babylonians, Greeks, Imperial Romans, Roman Catholics, Arab Muslims, Ottoman Muslims, and finally the British. And that's at home, apart from the diaspora. They would have no one to blame but themselves. Had they turned to Yahweh and relied on him rather than on Judaism, he would have provided a safe sanctuary for them. We have a similar choice to the one afforded the Northern Kingdom circa 740 BCE, religion or the covenant relationship, government or God, the military or the Mikra, treaties or the Torah. The two houses of Israel address the divisions and infighting between the Northern Kingdom, known collectively as Ephraim, or just Israel, and the Southern Kingdom, which was led by Yehuda, Judah. This split occurred following King Solomon, dividing the chosen people into two houses, neither of which was allied with Yahweh. The consequence was explained by the prophet Hosea, through whom God revealed that both houses had broken his covenant and were no longer his children. He divorced himself from them, but not at the same time or forever. Speaking prophetically of what would eventually occur, God told the prophet Hosea that the rift would be healed, something Daud accomplished on 595 Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, and Shabu in 33 CE, year 4000 year, and that 2 days, which represents 2000 years, later, and thus in 2033, father and son would reunite Israel and Yahweh in the process of reaffirming the covenant, thereby reconciling his relationship with his children. Just prior to Yahweh's return, when the consequence of political, religious, militant, and conspiratorial rhetoric becomes intolerable, Yahweh will find life difficult. And, they will stumble and be overthrown, Kashal, they will fail and be brought down, with, a great many rabbis, also, falling, Nafal, being brought down and ruined. And, they shall be destroyed, ceasing to exist, Shabbat, broken and cut off, ensnared and controlled, Yarash, trapped, even, captured, becoming immovable while clinging together, laked, caught, seized, bound, and imprisoned while grasping at each other. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:15. In this next statement, there are different ways to translate Zarah, the verb associated with Towrah, the written and restoring testimony documenting the terms of the agreement. Zarah can be rendered as to wrap up, cover, bind, and store the document, to keep it safe or to harass and frustrate those considered to be adversarial to it. In addition, it can be translated as to bring about the purpose of the testimony or to fix, mend, and restore the witness. Also, we find chatam used in conjunction with Yahweh's Torah. Based upon how we translate this verb, God could be saying that his instructions will be signed and sealed with his personal stamp, that his guidance will be sealed up and made secure, or that his teaching represents the appropriate pattern for living. Since they are all permissible, it is safer to include all of these definitions in this fully amplified translation. 596 These factors are important because Yahweh is in the midst of affirming one of the most surprising declarations we have considered thus far. God foresaw and then foreclosed on a problem that, unchecked, would have become an irresolvable plague. This suggests that one of the reasons rabbis remain fixated on their Talmud and Mishnah rather than Yahweh's Torah is that they do not understand it. Averse to his guidance, unaware even of his name, stupefied by the purpose of his invitations, and ignorant of the intent of the covenant, they are engaged in mental masturbation among themselves. While their fixation on one another is annoying, their presumptuous and argumentative nature only affects those spellbound by them and, thus, only religious Jews. Apart from their errant co-opting of terms such as Torah and Passover, their verbal diarrhea does not demean or discredit Yahweh's Torah, Shem, Mikra, or Berith. They are disparaging themselves, not God. Choose to wrap up, cover, and store the written testimony, keeping the correct information safe and secure from those who oppose it, and then bear witness to the authorized agreement to corroborate it and restore the relationship, Zara Towrah, restrict access for a while and then return and testify repeatedly, attesting to and confirming the witness, Kal imperative, sign, seal, and affix the personal stamp to the Torah's teaching, Chatham Torah, secure the Torah's guidance, recognizing that the Torah's instructions represent the appropriate pattern for living, Kal imperative, for, var, among, my students who learn from me, limud any, those I teach and who receive instruction from me as receptive pupils. Yasha'yah, Yah saves, Isaiah 8:16. After asking Israel to observe his Torah and listen to him for over 700 years prior to Yasha'yah, the political 597 and religious leadership of Israel had become so corrupt it was no longer of any use. In fact, talking to Israel had become counterproductive. The people were so badly misled that their every inclination was to misappropriate and misrepresent God's testimony, which is far worse than ignoring it. This left Yahowah with a difficult decision. He could continue to subject his Torah to religious gerrymandering or conceal it from his already estranged people. He wanted them to understand it, and come back home, but he could not allow them to change it or confuse others about his intent. So having seen well into the future, God realized that for the next 2,700 years, there would be no one willing to listen or learn. During that time, he would essentially keep the Torah under wraps, knowing that, when the opportunity was right, he would find someone he could teach, someone willing to listen and then share the insights with Yahweh. That time is now? Just 3 chapters hence, Yasha'yah will describe Yahowah's solution to this problem. He would raise up a chota, sucker from the original rootstock. Recognizing that the learning curve would be steep, the breadth of material expansive, and the stakes exceedingly high, God would assign 7 spirits to educate, enlighten, empower, and embolden his witness. During the past 22 years, the blinders have been removed, at least for those who are no longer controlled by the rabbis and the religious. If you are receptive to learning, if you are willing to respond appropriately to God's guidance, if you accept the fact that his testimony is limited to the Torah, Nabi, wa Mizmor, if you are rational and appreciate the value of corroborating information, and if you are interested in making the connections to correctly ascertain Yahowah's approach to his people, then you are welcomed into his presence. 598 While his people have given God every reason to continually conceal the meaning and purpose of his Torah, guidance, his constraints were nonetheless limited, directed toward those inclined to corrupt and pervert his teaching. This would, therefore, include all those who errantly refer to the Torah as the law, to Yahweh as the Lord, to the Mikra as Jewish feasts, or to the Mashiach and Ben El as Jesus Christ. If you turn to the Talmud or New Testament for answers, you are on God's restricted list. Yahowah has quite literally obstructed access to the original autograph of his Torah, the signed copy he provided Moses. It remains alongside the Ark of the Covenant and stone tablets in a sealed cavern beneath Moriah in Yerushalayim. Its release will be orchestrated in conjunction with Yahowah's return. In addition, while many hundreds of the oldest surviving manuscripts of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms were concealed for 2 millennia, and thus during the rise of the rabbis, now, with the published texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have been given access to the Word of God recorded apart from rabbinical and Christian influence. And for the first time in all of those years, an honest effort has begun to ascertain what God revealed so long ago, allowing the voice of the Almighty to rise above the screech of religion once again. Whether it is in Yada Yahowah, as predicted by God, or from another, who, with Yahowah's support and spiritual assistance, embarks on this mission to expose what God had once concealed, our attitude and approach toward Yahowah will calibrate our capacity to understand what our Father is requesting of us. Words are just words, the carriers of information until they are given the proper meaning and explained. 599 So, I will wait in anticipation, Chaka, I will be patient while longing for that which is inscribed to cut us into the relationship, from Chaka, to portray in print, engraving that which allocates a share, for the approach of, to draw near, Yahowah, who is concealing his presence, Satar Panahu, who is making his appearance and characteristics, even his existence, unknown, from the house, Min Baith of Jacob, one who embeds his heels, a pseudonym for Israel. Then, therefore, I will confidently await the outcome which is beneficial and good, Kawa, I will look forward to, anticipating, eagerly expecting and ingathering, in association with him, Lahu. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:17. The moment Yasha'yah was confidently awaiting is right now, this day. As a result of focusing upon the words of the prophet at long last, we can eagerly anticipate the imminent ingathering of Yahweh. While God can be known, he has no interest in making it easy. And while his agenda and timing remain a mystery for most, those who listen to him confidently await the beneficial outcome he has promised. We know that he will return for Israel, remove the filth, and restore our planet. As a Nabi, Yasha'yah was not responsible for attracting an audience, building a following, promoting this message, or saving anyone within his community. His lone mission was to accurately convey Yahweh's revelations to him. Further, since Yasha'yah isn't known to have performed a single sign or wonder in the sense of a miracle, oath and mofith are being used in this next statement to represent something far more impressive, more enduring, and useful, prophecy. By conveying a message that accurately foretold future events, Yahweh proved that he is God, that he inspired these words, and 600 that we can trust what he has to say. Then by punctuating his predictions with oath, illustrative and memorable examples, God provided mofith, important and awe-inspiring events which serve to encourage a response, all by revealing future history. It is impossible to overstate the importance of prophecy in this regard. What it accomplishes is more valuable than the universe and everything in it. After all, what could be more important than verifying that Yahweh exists, than demonstrating that his testimony in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms can be trusted, than proving that he has provided a means to develop a relationship with him, and that he is ready, willing, and able to empower and enrich our existence. Behold, Hine, pay attention, note the added emphasis and consider the details, I, myself, Eni, and, Wa, that which I have conceived, Ha Yeled, the offspring, to benefit from the relationship that, Asher, Yahowah, has bestowed through me, Nathan Liani, has brought to and presented to me, serve as signs to illustrate the message, La Oath, as a banner to convey a marvelous account which serves as proof and is memorable, from youth, to agree, and, Wa, as symbols of important future events which will occur. La Mofith, as extraordinary indicators which encourage a response by revealing that which will transpire, with and through, Bar, Yisrael, those who engage and endure with God, Yisrael, in conjunction with, Yahowah, of the spiritual implements, Zaba, who dwells, camping out, Shaken, who resides, lives, and abides. Making a home and remaining in, Bar, Mount, Ha, the ridgeline and elevated terrain of, Zion, the signs posted along the way. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:18. While I think that this is the most insightful rendering of these words, it is not the only interpretation. Yasha'yah 601 may have been commenting upon the name of the prophetess child, saying that it is an important sign for the future of Israel. Also, the offspring his words would conceive include the covenant's children, particularly as his revelations shine most brilliantly during the last days. Each perspective is relevant and should be considered, especially since compelling prophecy is Yasha'yah's greatest gift to his people. But not everyone would be on the same page and see things this way. Most would prioritize religion over relationship, man's spiritual advice over God's promises, the assistance of saints rather than the gift of life. And when, YKY, so to the contrary, rather and instead, they say to you, Amar al-Atam, they plead with you, encouraging you, you should consult, Dirosh, you should choose to seek previously unknown information, expecting answers, resort to, petition, and ponder, seriously consider revelations, Kal imperative, with, El, the mediums who speak for those who lived in the past, Ha-Ob, those who claim to communicate with the enlightened sages who have passed away or with the ghosts of the dead. A conjunction of Ab and Or, fathers of light, and, Wa, the spiritualists, Ha-Yadani, those claiming to possess spiritual insights such as Kabbalah, revealing troublesome knowledge gleaned from the spiritual world. Providing invalid and agonizing information, from Yada, to know and claim familiarity and Oni, to vex and grieve, who meditate and mutter unfounded sentiments, Ha-Haga, who ruminate over highly selective information to express their woeful and imaginative opinions, and, Wa, who twitter toxic musings, Ha-Zafaf, who chirp like birds and mutter that which is deadly, related to Zapha, the offshoots of venomous serpents and poisonous vipers. Instead, shouldn't the people, Ha-Lo-Am? As a rhetorical question, would it not be better for the family, consult, Dirosh, seek information and expect answers, petition 602 and seriously consider the revelations, look to develop a relationship, Kal imperfect active, with, El, their God, Elohim Hu, through, Bod, for the benefit of, the living, Ha-Che, those who are alive, nourished, growing. And actually exist as a conscious being, not, Al, as opposed to, the dead, Harmouth, those absent of life. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:19. With the answer so obvious, why do just 1 in a million consult with God through the living? Why do billions listen to dead men like Paul, Akiba, Maimonides, and Muhammad? Every Christian saint, the sages among rabbinic Talmudists, and successful suicide bombers share more than death in common. You should know that al, translated as not, at the conclusion of the sentence, and written, aleph lamed, can be transliterated as either el or al. As a noun, el is Almighty God. As a preposition, el is translated, to, toward, by, among, or for, but al can also serve to negate a verb or a noun as it is here with Harmouth. It seemed logical to select the definition which best fits the context of the discussion. There were several words I found amusing in Yasha'yah's declaration. A Yada'ani, spiritualist is Yada, familiar with Oni, vexing grief and agony. Therefore, there isn't much benefit in consulting them unless one is searching for ways to afflict oneself on Yom Kippurim, or aggravate oneself by reading the Zohar. Second, Haggah, which was translated as who meditate, and mutter unfounded sentiments, speaks of ruminating over highly selective information to devise a plot and express a woefully imaginative opinion. This is the essence of conspiracy theories. Isolated information is removed from the context of an event while all non-corroborating evidence is discarded. Then while the 603 conspiratorialist ruminates on their highly selective opinions, they mix in a plethora of bizarre theories. And third, 2,700 years before Twitter, now called X, was invented, knowing that social media would be the primary conduit of the crazies, Yasha'yah wrote that they would use Twitter to tweet their debilitating venom. Social media has become like a neurotoxin for this comatose generation. According to La, the Torah, source of teaching, guidance, instruction, and direction, and Wa, according to La, the written testimony which presents correct and corroborating information regarding restoration, Towrah, the authorized documentation regarding the confirmation of the relationship agreement pertaining to an inheritance, a compound of Torah, source of guidance, instruction, direction, and teaching, and Yud, to repeatedly testify about restoration and to continually bear an affirming witness, if, on the condition, they do not speak, lo amar, they do not answer and respond, kal imperfect active, in a manner consistent with, ka, in a way which is comparable to and compatible with, in accordance and agreement with, this specific message and the way it is worded, hadabar hazeh, these statements, then as a result, asher. They lack discernment and are without enlightenment in their approach to Shahar, ein lahu Shahar, they will be negated, in the dark, having nothing to offer, lacking even the first glimpse of light because they are moving towards Satan. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 8:20. In the 14th chapter of Yasha'yah, which we will study in the Babel, Confusion chapter of volume 4 of Observations, we learn that Satan's name is Ha'il ben Shahar, brightly shining son of darkness. Ha'il ben Shahar depicts the adversary as the flashy and boastful child of the East. The devil is comprised of contrasts, hypocrisy, and contradictions as light and darkness, 604 enlightenment and obscurity. Satan is an ostentatious show-off, a spiritual, energy-based being predisposed to mislead and make others appear foolish as they descend into the darkness and gloom of a black hole. Shahar, Satan is also known to us by way of the Canaanite and Phoenician religions. We find him along with Baal, the Lord throughout the Tel Ras Shamra texts, where Shahar is the name of the Canaanite and Phoenician god of the rising sun. The mythology of Shahar refers to the dawn and its dim light emerging out of the darkness. Then, they will pass through it, Obar Bahai, intoxicated, they will travel through and cross over, the darkness of Shahar, stubborn and stiff-necked, strong-willed and perplexed, Kasha, wholly resistant to any advice or assistance due to a puzzling lack of humility and an attitude of superiority, and will experience cruelty and brutality as a result, enduring hardship, often, starving and famished, Rab, malnourished and weakened, akin to Roa, willfully malicious and overtly evil. And it shall come to pass, higher, so it will come to be, when, they are malnourished and weakened, Rab, starving and famished as a result of being willfully malicious, overtly evil, and deliberately afflicted, they will become antagonized and provoked to anger, struggling with their change in status, Katsaf, they will be enraged and vengeful, suffering from cognitive dissonance in conjunction with their strife, fretting that the situation in which they find themselves is unfair and undeserved. Showing dissension at having been uprooted and splintered. Their status will diminish, and they will be treated with contempt as a result of their propensity to slander and insult the reputation. Kalal, they will be despised 605 and seen as vile, they will curse and blaspheme, becoming an object of scorn as a result of their reputation, of their king, Bar Melech Hu, of their leader, and, of their god, Bar Elohim Hu, in opposition to the Almighty, turning away, Pana, facing away, kal perfect, while being unfaithful in the relationship, la mal. Moving toward adultery. Yasha'yah, freedom is from Yahowah, Isaiah 8:21. From the beginning, those who have chosen to call themselves rabbis, great have shown a deplorable lack of humility. And it is this unwarranted air of superiority that has turned so many people against Jews, and has been devastating for God's people. With their ridiculously religious, money-grubbing kosher laws, they have weakened and malnourished people. And in the process of elevating their words and edicts over God's, they have antagonized and provoked the Almighty. By having insulted and slandered Yahowah, they have been unfaithful, creating an Adonai in their own image. The Melech whose reputation has been upended by the religious is Daud, the man Yahowah selected to be king. They do not recognize him as the Son of God, as the Messiah, or as the one who is returning, much less as the Passover lamb or the firstborn fulfilling Matzah and Bikurim. This, from the Father's perspective, is especially insulting. This is the consequence of being misled. It is why Yahowah despises religion. Unto the land, wa el eres, they will look, nabat, they will gaze, but, wa, behold, they will see, hine, disfavor, zara, anguishing trouble, calamitous distress, and unfavorable circumstances as a result of an antagonistic and competitive, rival mistress who is vexing and adversarial, and, wa, darkness, cheshka, obscurity 606 with an absence of light, with discouraging, morph, dejection and gloomy, oppression, soka, anguish as a result of being constrained and distressed, and, wa, into a place devoid of light, a feeler, into total darkness, lacking any light, they will be driven and stray, nadak, they will be exiled and enticed, lured and scattered, outcast and banished, Paul passive. Yasha'yah, deliverance is from Yahowah, Isaiah 8:22. For most, being devoid of light will simply mean that their souls will fade away. But for some, their souls will be exiled, banished to the place without light, Shaul. This dismal fate has befallen Yahweh because of the failure among Jews to observe Yahowah's Torah, preferring instead to submit to rabbinical arguments. It has been 3,000 years since the children of Israel lived in a manner consistent with Yahowah's teaching and guidance. As a result, the chosen people have suffered a power outage, groping in the dark by having walked away from the light. Since that time Yisrael and Yahweh have been shrouded in darkness. This obscuring gloom would remain for millennia, mostly due to the collective and personal stubbornness of God's people. Their sense of superiority has made the best and brightest resistant to advice, even when it comes from God. As a result, the Israelites find themselves treated cruelly, often afflicted, and sometimes starving. Unable to accept responsibility for their decline in status and for having been uprooted, the world still mocks them, slandering and insulting their reputation as the chosen people. Israel has remained a source of antagonism, shrouded in the fog of oppressive religious regimes. Over 100 generations of Israelites would live as outcasts, exiled from their land and estranged from their 607 God, all too often bearing the brunt of hideous conspiracies. This is the conclusion of Yasha'yah 8, comprised of the words that lead to an understanding of often misappropriated prophecy found in Isaiah 9:6. It addresses events that will transpire just prior to God's return with his Son. And since Daud is the only Melech who would be associated with Yahowah in this way, since he is the only king of Israel at this time, we have been afforded a rather important insight. In the context of God's unrelenting admonition against conspiracies, he will now focus upon the most debilitating and popular, replacement theology, which essentially means, take everything away from the Jews, beginning with Daud, and give it to Jesus and the Gentile church. This is the reason the upcoming prophecy has been mistranslated and misappropriated, claiming for the Christian Christ what Yahowah had conveyed about David. Not only is the product of replacement theology the most pervasive anti-Semitic conspiracy in world history, but the overwhelming preponderance of those prone to believe conspiracies are critical of Jews. It was, therefore, the genius of Yahowah and Yasha'yah to introduce the soaring oratory of Isaiah 9 with the sober assessments contained in the 8th chapter. As we turn the page and enter the 9th chapter of Yasha'yah, we discover that there should have been no excuse for the religious, political, militant, and conspiratorial darkness that has engulfed Israel. Jews have had at their fingertips the means to bask in Yah's light. 608 Indeed, KY, truthfully and nevertheless, there has been no lack of counsel, no reason for discouragement, nor inability to flee from the darkness, lo mavaf lahai, there has been no reason for doom and gloom, despair or dejection because there has been no shortage of advice and wisdom on how to take flight, from youth, ability to take flight and fly away, for those subjugated and constrained along the way, la asher mozark, for those restricted and oppressed. For those deprived of liberty who have endured hardships during distressing times as a result of the relationship, as there was during the previous time, Kaha Etha Rishon, as was the case prior, And in comparison to the initial occasion, when he receded from Kalal, when he came to disdain and show little regard for Hyphal perfect, the land of Zabulun, Erez Zabulun, Zebulun, son of Jacob and Leah, place of the honored and exalted, and where the egotistical reside and brag about themselves, and the land of Naphtali, Waha Erez Naphtali, Naphtali, son of Jacob and Bilhah, place of twisting and wrestling. In this latter time, during the last days, Waha Akaroun, yet in the end, he will deal harshly with the troublesome nature of Kabed, he will struggle with the intensely oppressive and onerous weight and the grievous and bothersome nature of the dim-witted, harsh, stubborn, and intransigent masses associated with the large, pretentious populations of people of Hyphal perfect, the way of the sea, Derek Ha-Yam, the path of the water, and a metaphor for Gentiles, beyond Eber. Across and on the eastern and opposite side of the Yarden, to go down, Ha-Yarden, the Jordan River, to descend, from Yared, to go down, of Galil, the circuitous and convoluted way, Galil, Galilee, turning and circuitous, rolling away and convoluted, the pivot point of the socio-political realm, the open doorway, of the Goim, Gentiles, Goim, the confluence of ethnicities, non-Israelites, and other 609 nations. Yasha'yah, liberation and salvation are from Yah, Isaiah 9:1. For the millions of Yahudim who have suffered so grievously at the hands of conspiratorial, political, and religious Jews and Gentiles these past 3,000 years, Yahweh's assertion that they could have precluded such agonizing abuse may seem incredulous. And that is largely because they have sought relief from the nameless Hashem and detached God of Judaism. Had Yahweh responded, he would have reinforced their religious deceptions. It is a simple concept. If you want someone to help you, don't insult them. While it may be painful to admit, had Rabbi Akiba not foisted Judaism, the Talmud, and a false Messiah upon Jews residing in Judea, they would not have been bludgeoned by the Romans, expelled from Judea as slaves causing the diaspora, or witnessed the rebranding of Yahweh's Philistia. There would have been no isolation in shtetls or ghettos, no pogroms, and no Holocaust. The injury was religious, and it was self-inflicted. And according to Yahweh, it was not for a lack of counsel. Based upon his people's preference for religion over relationship, and men's words to his own, Jews precluded Yahweh from intervening to protect them or anyone else in the same predicament. And while that is counter to every religious notion, it is as it should be. There would be no reason for God to intercede on behalf of those who are lying about him, and who haven't bothered to listen to him. Doing so would undermine everything he has said and done. The key to understanding this pronouncement is that Yahweh has already provided all of the advice and counsel Jews or Gentiles would ever need to live free and fulfilling lives. It's simply a matter of knowing where to look and whom to trust. For most of the past 3,000 years, 610 Israelites and Yahudim have chosen poorly, and have suffered for it. One would have thought that, after being humiliated and abused by the Philistines, Assyrians, Egyptians, Babylonians, Greeks, Romans, Roman Catholics, Muslims, Europeans, Nazis, communists, and now progressives, somewhere along the way there would have been another Hezekiah moment. Over the course of 30 centuries of constant failure and collective persecution, why not pick up a copy of the Torah and do as Hezekiah had done when besieged by the Assyrian army? He rid the land of all traces of religion and then celebrated the Modim of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim as instructed. It worked and no other approach has prevailed since that time. Isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over again expecting a different result? The noted exception to Yahweh's prerogative not to intervene in our current reality to protect and heal his children, or anyone for that matter, is appropriately depicted in Mizmor 91. Those who are accurately conveying God's message on behalf of his people are defended so that they can get the job done. But make no mistake, even for them, intervention and protection are afforded to those who value Yahweh's counsel and who use it to move toward the God the Israelites have rejected. Moreover, now that we are in the midst of the Akaroun, last days, recognize that the distinction between those working with Yahweh and against him will be dramatic because the time has come for God to rebuke Israel's enemies, and particularly the Galil, convoluted ways of the Goim. Even those living in Zabulun and Naphtali could have been emancipated long ago had they read and accepted the Torah, Mizmor 1 Nabi. And yet, it wouldn't have been easy because there was no one from either tribe through whom Yahweh could reiterate or explain his message of liberation. 611 While God is knowable without a personal introduction, such connections seldom occur because societal interference and institutional obstacles are nearly insurmountable. Therefore, the principal difference in this timeline between then and now is that God, rather than retreating, is about to return. If you are reading this during the last days, capitalize on your good fortune. As mentioned, there was a brief respite under Hezekiah when Yahweh, Judah returned to Yahweh's Torah, teaching. They rid their land of religious artifacts and places of worship, then celebrated Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. Unfortunately, Zebulun was listed along with Manasseh as the two tribes who mocked Hezekiah's messengers as they traveled around Israel to invite the people to participate in the upcoming Feast of Unyeasted Bread. It is also worth noting that both sons, Zebulun and Naphtali, were born out of envy, with Leah and Rachel fighting to impress Jacob, enticing him with their servants. Their allocation of land was, therefore, the furthest from Jerusalem, which is what made them susceptible to marauding Gentiles. Those who would march through Naphtali and Zebulun en route to Yahweh would include the likes of the Amalekites and Hittites, the aforementioned Assyrians and Babylonians, followed by the Greeks and Romans, the Byzantines and Ottomans, the Roman Catholic Crusaders, and more recently, Hezbollah and Hamas. Less than a decade from now, and after the fall of Syria, it will be the entry point for a flood of jihadists. The primary meaning of Kebed isn't to honor but, instead, to make weighty and burdensome, revealing that Yahowah will struggle with the intensely oppressive and onerous weight, as well as the grievous and troublesome nature of the dim-witted and intransigent masses associated with the way of the sea, i.e., Gentiles. They are going 612 down as a result of their circuitous conspiracies and convoluted beliefs. In this vein, Derek Hayam can be translated either as the way of the sea, serving as a reference to Gentiles, or the path of the water, which is a directional reference. When the subject is the Yarden, which means to descend, there is a message for the Galil, convoluted Goim, Gentiles about where they are headed. This is the dawning of a new day. The darkness will fade to light. A remnant of Yahweh will finally be liberated. And while that is the best possible news for Israelites, God is also announcing that he will hold the Gentile nations accountable for what they have done to antagonize his people. The day which Christians have longed to see will become their nightmare as God's people are saved from them. The people, Ham, the family or nation of kinsmen who share the same ethnicity, culture, and language, and who are biologically related, typically used in reference to Israel and to distinguish Israelites from Goim, singular masculine, who walked, ha-holok, who traveled through life, kal participle, actively and demonstrably, literally and relationally, in the darkness and were confused, bah-choshik, in ignorance without the light, obscured and unenlightened, have been shown, ra, have been able to observe, kal perfect, can at this moment actually see, an astonishingly important, gadol, an extensive and expansive, a great and distinguished, an older and enabling, an especially forceful and capable, from gadol, to become significant and enable growth by accomplishing great things, a magnified and empowered, light, or, source of enlightenment. For those who have dwelt, yashab, those who have lived and who may remain, kal participle, genuinely, actively, and vividly endure, in the realm of, bar eres, 613 inches the land of, the shadow of death, Zarmoith, the foreboding darkness of dying, from Tsel, that which impedes the light and Moith, perishing at the hands of others, the light, or, the source of enlightenment presented in absolute contrast, to the surrounding darkness, will shine brilliantly upon them to enlighten them, Nagar Alhem, has been presented as a luminary over them, providing the enlightenment, knowledge, and understanding needed to respond appropriately, attractive, even beautiful, in his appearance and radiant in his demeanor before them, kal perfect, literally for a finite period of time, masculine plural in reference to the members of the Am family. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 9:2. This prophecy opened with a condemnation of Gentiles. It is, therefore, not predicting their awakening. Further, the Goim during the advent of the Christian era, were the killers, not those living under death's shadow. That remains so to this day. The Christian misrepresentation is, therefore, incredulous. There is no evidence to suggest that a single Gawi, much less many, saw or recognized David as the Pesach Passover lamb in 33 CE. And obviously, based upon their alleged testimony, Jews and Gentiles alike were clueless as to why any of this was occurring. Further, while Daud will return as brilliant as the sun, no one circa 33 CE was illuminated in this manner. This was an exceedingly dark period for Yahudah, and it would only get worse over time. Not a single eyewitness account spoke of an arrival of light shining brilliantly upon them. And this is because Daud will not manifest such glory until his return on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 2033 CE. Yasha'yah is, therefore, still speaking to the remnant of Israelites living in the last days, during the transition from the time of Jacob's troubles to the grand 614 reunion. Those who rekindle their relationship with Yah as a result of Daud's brilliant oratory and Yasha'yah's prophecies will see his light shine upon them when he returns. And they, too, will have lived through the shadow of death. There isn't any justification for a middle ground, for concluding that a great many people witnessed something profoundly illuminating in 33 CE. The fact is, then as now, fewer than 1 in a million people recognize that Daud, as the Messiah and King, became the Passover lamb, nor do they realize the Son of God is returning as brilliant as the sun. God's people are just now becoming aware of this realization. It would take a Gawi 27 centuries after this announcement to plug the light back in, flip on the switch, clean on the optics, and restore God's luminary. As we approach the next statement, there are two ways to translate Rabah HaGawi. The first predicts the arrival of a singular and empowered non-Israelite who plays a role in the enlightenment of God's people pursuant to announcing the arrival of the Gadol or. The second has Dowd referring to Yahweh's family as a great Gawi, nation, which is improbable on this occasion because will be in tatters by this time and will remain so until after Dowd's return. Not only is the Messiah tasked with saving his people from the brink of extinction at the hands of Gawim, there will only be a remnant remaining. Further, because the Gentiles will have been the source of the ensuing darkness, God is not going to have us confuse one for the other. Therefore, in light of Dowd's incontrovertible declaration in the 118th Mizmor of ridding the world of Gentiles upon his return, it's inconceivable that Yeh referred to his family as a Gawi, Gentile nation during the last days. 615. With this in mind, we are left with the realization that Yahweh is addressing the role a Gawi will play in drawing his people back to the light by amplifying his word. This is the most literal rendering of the phrase Rabah HaGawi. You have raised up and enabled the Gentile, Rabah HaGawi, you have increased the capability of this particular Gawi to magnify and amplify, rearing him as if he were your own offspring, empowering and expanding the ability of this individual, who is ethnically unrelated and who comes from a distant place and time, equipping the Gentile, or alternatively, you have increased the nation, hyphal perfect second person masculine singular, Yahweh is responsible for enabling this lone Gawi, empowering him such that he begins to reflect Yah's nature and intent by amplifying his word for a period of time, without boasting or exalting yourself, nor improperly speaking of the favors you sought to bestow, lo gadol, without glorifying or promoting yourself, hyphal perfect, for a finite time you trained the Gawi such that he could represent you in an unpretentious manner. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 9:3 in part. No matter how one translated Rabah HaGawi, this did not occur in 33 CE, nor on behalf of Christianity, even if one believes the evolving myths of the New Testament. While a powerful nation, Yahweh had nothing to do with Rome. From his perspective, they were the most vicious and anti-Jewish of beasts. He did not raise them up on this occasion, nor did he enable their savage destruction of his temple, land, people, and son. Moreover, from this point forward, Rome began to disintegrate under the weight of her own grotesque immorality. Likewise, this cannot speak of Judea because the tiny province would soon cease to exist. Rome would persecute Jews, robbing, enslaving, and murdering God's chosen to their last gasping breath. 616. Should you question why Yahweh would promise through this prophecy to raise up and enable a Gawi to call his people home while not exalting himself, the answer is found in Shemoth, Exodus and Dabarim, Deuteronomy. Long ago, when the Torah was first revealed, Yahweh understood that his overwhelming presence, light, and voice intimidated the children of Israel because they did not know him, which is the opposite of what he intended. And so, he would refrain from lo gadol, speaking directly of the favors he had sought to bestow upon his people. And yet, Yahweh knew that he had to address Yahweh to get them to come home prior to the fulfillment of Yom Kippurim in year 6000 year. Therefore, in the preamble of the most profound prophecy regarding what he was planning to do to make this possible, he introduced the Gawi who would serve as his cowl, voice and Eder, witness. For a finite time, God equipped an observant foreigner such that he would represent him in an unpretentious manner. You are witnessing the fulfillment of that prophecy, and perhaps seeing it for the first time since these words were scribed circa 743 BCE, 777 and 2777 years prior to Dowd's fulfillment of the Modim. A Gawi has been raised up and enabled by God to herald Dowd's arrival as the light. As proof that this is true, this lone Gentile is the first and only individual to rationally and irrefutably demonstrate that this entire prophecy, one relentlessly denied by Jews and incessantly claimed by Christians, speaks of the Messiah and Son of God, Dowd. He, as the chosen one, is the subject of 2 Samuel 7, Isaiah 53, and the 89th Psalm. Yahweh's prophets scribed his revelations so that we could read them. Then, his witness shared them so that God's people could hear him speak to them. From that lone exception on Korib, when his voice boomed from atop 617 the mountain, Yahweh has communicated with Israel through Nabi, prophets and Eder, witnesses. The former were always Israelites like Moses, Dowd, and Yasha'yah, while a Basar, human herald could be a Naka, observant foreigner. What changed is that his people stopped listening to him. God's voice was drowned out by power-hungry men with other agendas. Over this vast chasm of time, Yahweh searched the world to find a single Yahweh among his chosen who would respond, but there was nothing but a deafening silence. Since this problem was so pervasive, and his solution so exceptional, Yahowah decided that the best course of action was to warn Israel in advance of it occurring so that when it happened as predicted, they would recognize him and finally pay attention. And in the process, Yahweh would come to know Yahowah's name as well as the identity of their Messiah and Savior. This would not be a once-and-done announcement from God to his people. The Almighty would ask his prophets to speak of this final witness often, addressing his role at the most opportune moments. And what could be more fortuitous than this one, with the Gawi presented in the preamble of his most commonly recited prophecy regarding his son and the work they would accomplish together. Yahowah is on record announcing that he would fortify Gawi to garner his people's attention. He would prop him up and empower him, equipping him to do what Yahweh should have done. It would be like using a candle to announce the sunrise. This would be a miracle worth elaborating on. It would not be the first time that Yahowah would move his people with a single, ill-equipped individual. On a similar occasion, and as a prelude to an earlier Yasha'yah, 618 Exodus, he confronted the most egotistical nation on earth to retrieve the children of Israel using a stuttering shepherd. It worked previously, so why not this time? However, to properly calibrate our expectations, 34 centuries ago, only 2 of the 600,000 God sought to rescue actually made it into the Promised Land, and even that took 40 years. This time, there would be only 32 years without the possibility of an extension. However, while I am not of Moshe's caliber, the potential audience has grown 30-fold, and the technology needed to reach them is infinitely superior. Moreover, Yahowah has proven his existence and reliability, and he has revealed everything we need to know to prevail. Fortunately, the mission has been forecast to be successful. Those who are willing to listen will be delighted with the outcome of our journey. The final harvest may be relatively small, but it will be joyous. Yes, people are coming home. The delight, simcha, the elation and cheerful attitude, the pleasure and happiness, they will joyfully express, samak, they, addressing the family, will happily manifest, outwardly conveying their cheerful contentment at that moment in time, kal perfect, as they approach your presence, la panaota, as they draw near and appear before you, will be comparable to, ka, will be similar to, the jubilation experienced, simcha, the happiness and cheerfulness, the elation and pleasure, the delight expressed. During the harvest, Baha Katsa, in the collecting of the fruit during the time of reaping in the proper season, consistent with, Ka'asha, comparable to, rejoicing over the favorable circumstances, Jil, the gladness expressed in joyous shrieks, shouts and songs, Kal imperfect, genuinely and continually, when they are apportioned, Va Chalakhem, with their assignment, distribution. And allotment of, Peel infinitive, they receive the benefits of the inheritance with 619 the apportionment expressed as an actionable noun regarding, that which is valuable, Shalal, the good property and possessions offered to the victorious who prevail as a spoil. Yasha'yah, liberation and salvation are from Isaiah 9:3. Unless God's idea of joyous harvest is the death and enslavement of his people, this event did not occur in year 4000 33 CE. Therefore, one would have to be religious to believe that the ensuing prophecy is addressing the mythical misnomer, Jesus. A jubilant harvest, and joyous apportionment are the results of the Mikray enabling the Berith. Yahweh have been invited to attend the harvests and share in the distribution of the covenant's benefits. As such, this message is for returning Israelites, for those who will answer Yahowah's invitation to engage in the familial relationship, particularly on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations in year 6000 2033 CE. It cannot be for the religious. At the behest of rabbis, Jews deny Daud's fulfillment of the Modim, especially Pesach. They eliminated Matzah, they deny Bikurim, they believe Shabat was fulfilled 3472 years ago, they replaced Towrah with a Babylonian holiday, and they appended Kippurim such that it is the opposite of its intent. It cannot be for Christians either because they disdain the Mikray and replaced them all with pagan holidays. And they substituted a New Testament for the Berith and Jesus for Daud. Even in their New Testament mythology, Jesus did not bring joy to Christians. According to the religious law, they suffered persecution. There was no harvest either, and of course, the Church deliberately distanced itself from Yahowah, besmirching his witness and reputation in the process. Therefore, pointing out the obvious, this prophecy cannot pertain to Jesus or to Christians. That is not to say 620 that they will not have a part to play, but that since Daud will be ridding the world of Christians, the faithful will have nothing to celebrate. As we now move ever closer to this magnificent prophecy, we find God speaking of a single individual being liberated from societal constraints and freed of financial, religious, and political burdens. With that in mind, the last masculine singular reference in this pronouncement addresses Hagawi, the Gentile responsible for disseminating God's message such that the result would be a joyous homecoming and reunion. 4. KY. Indeed, truly, the constraints, Ol, the wooden frame and straps of a yoke used to control working animals, from Alol, to act severely and wantonly, dealing harshly and ruthlessly, of burdensome labor, economic pressures, or societal challenges pertaining to him, Sobel Hugh, of demands on his time, resulting hardships or compulsory obligations, and, Wa, that which is associated with, Eth, the religious or political influences, Mate, the ruling ornamental stick used as a symbol of religious authority and its ability to control and compel capitulation, from Nata, to stretch out and influence, to extend one's reach, and to cause one to bow down and be thrust aside, continually upon his back, especially early on, Shechem Hugh, repeatedly against his neck and shoulder at the beginning, you have diminished and even eliminated because you detest these things, Chatteth. You have shattered and discouraged that which you dread and disavow as distracting and divisive. Dashing and breaking their horrible and destructive influence, along with the rod and scepter of governmental authority over him, Chebet HaNojiz Bar Hugh, the rod of political and institutional influence and control over him, the club of those seeking to exploit him based upon partisan divisions, people who like to make and enforce rules acting like his slave drivers and tax collectors, those forcing him 621 into hard labor and exacting payment from him as he engages in the marketplace for goods and services. Yasha'yah, liberation and salvation are from Yah, Isaiah 9:4. This addresses the Gawi, non-Israelite who is to be engaged by God to call his people home for their Kippurim reunion with Daud. Always consistent, Yahowah recruited this foreigner using the same criteria he deployed when selecting Moses, the one who draws out. Moses knew nothing about Yahowah, not even his name, at the time of his calling, but he had a keen understanding of the political, religious, military, and economic forces at play in Miriam. The depravity of man's way was readily discernible to Moses, which is why he rejected it and became a shepherd. Rather than enduring the drudgery of warning us about religion and politics, our Father prefers addressing more positive things like his Torah, his Mikra and his Berith. Sharing his guidance is enjoyable while disparaging religion and politics is annoying. Moses required no instruction on the latter, allowing Yahowah to focus on the mission at hand. Religion is a nasty business, something God clearly wants to avoid. Therefore, out of the hundreds of millions of souls occupying the planet at that time, God chose the ideal person, one already predisposed to demonstrate his disdain for these human contrivances. Yah would teach him the rest. The Torah is the result. Moving forward a few thousand years, and on the cusp of the final Exodus, God's predilections have not changed. Therefore, he found and solicited, then equipped and enabled a Gentile in a similar situation. With so much to accomplish in such a short time, there would be no distractions. God, therefore, diminished the witness' economic burdens. And he picked a fellow who was both 622 well acquainted with and averse to religion and politics. Yahowah would have his undivided attention. And he would need it because there would be a lot to learn and share. Fortunately, the information Yahowah wanted him to convey was readily available and easily verified. Freed from distractions and benefiting from God's overwhelming support, this guy could devote the time to tell the intellectually captivating story of God and his Son. For the first time in over 2,000 years, words and insights that had eluded man's grasp would be acknowledged. In the process, Yahowah would become known to more Yahweh prior to his return than would have otherwise occurred. And the realization that none of this would require another prophet or additional revelation is especially relevant because it means that the truth has always been available to God's people, even if it went unnoticed. And while the outcome is known, the debate will continue to rage until we reach the limit of time. In the battle of ideas between the world's most popular religious faith and the Word of God, a person's perceptions regarding Daud will ultimately serve as the fulcrum upon which their lives pivot. Central to that debate is whether this prophecy pertains to a man or a myth, to Ben-El, Hamashiach, Melech, Wara, the Zarawa, the Pesach El, or to a nightmarish creature concocted upon the myths which underlie Dionysus and Odysseus, Osiris and Bacchus. On Daud's side of the ledger, there are 1,000 fulfilled prophecies and declarative statements. On the other side, there is nothing. The comparison is between a man whose name is stated over 1,000 times versus one whose name was never mentioned. 623. So how is it then that faithful prefer a myth to the most interesting man in human history by a factor of 1,000,000,000 to 1? Considering the consequence of getting this right, and cognizant that the fate of Yisrael on Yom Kippurim hinges on Yahowah's guidance, it seems evident that this phraseology regarding this Gawi was placed in the preamble of the most misappropriated prophecy to help answer these questions. In our quest to know Father and Son better, we find that they provide the means to expose the absurdity of replacement theology, the most debilitating influence on humankind. By accurately translating this prophecy, and appreciating its intent, we were able to unravel the lies upholding Judaism and Christianity. And with them impugned, Israelites are free to come home to Yahowah. Surprisingly, all that was ever needed to accurately translate Yasha'yah 9-4, 5 and 6, was to pay attention to the context, subject, and grammar. For example, rather than a conjunction linking the two implements wielded by those in power, in the preceding statement, Shabat, rod and scepter, is a construct. This means that the implements associated with religious and political institutions work in concert with one another as they extend and impose their reach. Similarly, Hugh is correctly translated as the third-person masculine singular pronoun him in English. However, Hugh can be it when addressing a singular masculine noun such as Gawi, so long as Gawi is rendered as foreign nation. However, should the Gawi be a man, he rather than it is required. Further, while nation and people are singular, both are comprised of many individuals, requiring the pronoun addressing them to be plural. I share this because my translation is markedly different from most others and the grammar makes it 624 appear somewhat self-centric. And yet, since there is no one else to whom any of this might apply, denying the obvious would be disrespectful to Yahowah and devastating to his people. According to the text, Yahowah found an underutilized and retired implement, and after liberating him from the control and influence of others, put that tool to use in a productive way. For the first time in nearly 3,000 years, words and insights that eluded humanity's grasp are being properly presented and explained. In the process, Yahowah is becoming known to more Yahweh prior to his return than ever before. God can honestly say, as he has done, that the means to know him and engage in the covenant relationship with him, has been there all the time, just waiting for his people to take him up on his offer. And if not now, then Yahweh are running out of tomorrows. His return, on Yom Kippurim, the Day of Reconciliations, is just 10 years away from this writing. In every way but one, I suspect that Yah would have preferred that his tool have Hebrew roots. But since there were none willing to disassociate from all forms of human authority, who were willing to be used in opposition to religion, politics, patriotism, and conspiracy, God pursued another way. As I have suggested, there is a reason God may have preferred working with a Gawi in this regard. He would serve as a not too subtle reminder that Yahweh are to blame for their estrangement. Their very name, Yahweh, reveals that they are Yahowah's chosen people. God's words were written in Hebrew. The scrolls unearthed in the Promised Land are the source of our translations. And since they forfeited their calling, Yahowah may have wanted them to eat a slice of humble pie, one served up by a Gentile. 625 Speaking of the scrolls found in Qumran, and transitioning from the last statement to the next, according to the Great Isaiah scroll, there is a wa, and before ka, as in the following statement. That's important because, in Hebrew, conjunctions are used to indicate the beginning of a new sentence. Therefore, I pulled the concluding phrase from the previous verse and added it to this one since the reference to Medin is a better fit for what follows than what preceded it. And, wa, then, from one Kesser not in the mount, as in the day, ka yaum, comparable to the time, of Medin, of questions regarding judgment, Midian, quarrelsome discord and strife based upon variant alterations and modifications, conflicting interests and contentiousness, or the exercise of good judgment leading to resolving a dispute, a compound of my, pondering the who, what, why, where, when, and how of Deen. The kind of thinking which leads to either vindication or contentious arguments depending upon the judgment of the one pleading the case, 9-4, surely since, ky, indeed by contrast because, every, shirl, boot, sandal of a soldier, from san, the treading and trampling feet of warriors, of marching armies, san, of militaries on the move who tread and tramp upon, is part of the commotion and clamor of battle, var rosh, the riotous discordant sounds of chaos. The staccato percussion of weapons and the rumbling earthquake of trembling of those doing the fighting, and the shuddering and fearful response of those seeking to defend themselves, and since wa, the attire, similar, the cloaks, clothing, and garments, is befouled by wallowing, galal, made filthy dirty by rolling, in blood, bar dam, they will come to exist as, wahialah, they will be, fuel, markaleth, that which is consumed and destroyed, from a kal, to be devoured, eaten up and devastated, to be burned up. Sarapha, thoroughly kindled and combusted, in the fire of blazing light and radiant energy, bright and glowing illumination. 626 Yasha'yah, liberation and salvation are from Yah, Isaiah 9:5. For anyone to misappropriate the prophecy presented in the next statement, they must disregard the fact that it is introduced by an overt reference to Midian and that it speaks of a loud and bloody army that is incinerated by God. Pointing out the obvious, this has not transpired at any time in our past. And it will not occur prior to Daud's return with Yahowah in 2033, year 6000 year. Since the prophecy regarding the Son who is given follows this statement, it's telling that the religious ignore it, for no other reason than it doesn't fit their narrative. And while ignorance may be the path to faith, it does not lead to Yah. Specifically, Yahweh's light is going to incinerate every soldier the world over upon his return. Be forewarned, do not enlist, equip, or support any military force because it will put you in opposition to Yahweh. God does not support troops. He does not take sides in human conflicts. He is not patriotic or pro-military. Quite the opposite, he is going to obliterate everyone in uniform and everything used to conduct war. In a nation like America, which is home to 40% of Jews worldwide, and where any reluctance to support the armed forces and salute the flag is considered an egregious offense against the country, Yahweh's overt hostility toward those things isn't good news. Returning to Medin, of the 24 times its root, din, appears in the Hebrew text, 4 are in parallel with shafot, to decide by being discerning, which is to exercise good judgment. It is twice used in conjunction with mishpat, making Medin somewhat equivalent in meaning. Therefore, Midian serves as a referendum on our ability to think. As for the land of Medin, it is first mentioned in Shemoth, Names 2:15. Moses fled to this place as an act 627 of conscience. He demonstrated himself worthy by having walked away from a leadership position within the dictatorial government of Miraim, Egypt, which was overwhelmingly religious, aggressively militant, and oppressive in its imposition of a caste system. As such, his sojourn to Medina is symbolic of dissociating ourselves from these same corrosive institutions today. It is a call for God's people to walk away from the modern manifestations of religious, political, and geographic Babylon, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Europe and the United States, as well as from engagements in the Middle East. Had Abraham not left Babylon, God would not have led him to the promised land. Had the children of Israel not left Miraim, Yahweh would not have led them back to Israel by way of Medin. Similarly, the Jews who remain bound to their religion, political party, or place within a foreign land will be excluded from the cherished remnant who witness Yahweh's return with King Daud. Mount Horeb is in Midian, the first point of safety after fleeing Miraim. It is the place where the Torah was revealed and the last place Israel listened directly to Yahweh. Just prior to this time, it was in Midian that Moses first came to gather and shepherd sheep. It is where Yahweh reached out to him and asked him to help liberate his people. There is no better place or preparation for serving Yahweh's children. It was in Midian that Moses was welcomed as if he were a Gentile. After he and his Midian wife gave birth to their first son, Gershom, Moses said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." Shemoth, Names 2:22, indeed, every Gentile adopted into the covenant immediately comes to realize that this also applies to them. 628 When Yahweh found Moses in Midian, this man appeared to be an unexpected choice. He had left Egypt, where he lived like royalty. The Hebrew slaves he had risked everything to save from the oppressive regime, rather than show their appreciation for his sacrifice, turned against him. It would be a harbinger of the relationship between Yahweh and Israel. Nonetheless, Moses showed great courage and character, even compassion in opposing the religious and political establishment which had made life so degrading for everyone apart from the Pharaoh's family and his priests. Their caste system would be predictive of what the Roman Church would do to Jews and their own throughout Europe. As a Israelite among Gentiles, Moses witnessed how cruel men become when they are molded by their nation. He also experienced the unappreciative and disloyal nature of Israelites. But then, he also saw that an individual Gawi can be moral and welcoming. While those experiences forged Moses' character, there is no denying that he was an 80-year-old man with a speech impediment. He was out tending sheep in a God-forsaken corner of the Arabian desert when Almighty God chose this lone individual to convey his name, word, and intent to the world. Most especially, it was in Midian that we were first introduced to Yahweh. And so, perhaps with this reference to this place in advance of the prophecy, Yahweh will be reintroduced to the realization that their God has a name. Now Moses was shepherding the flock of Yethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he guided his flock to that which comes after the wilderness, and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Shemoth, Exodus 3:1, Then the Malach, messenger of Yahweh was seen, appearing to him in a blazing fire from the 629 midst of the protruding precipice. He looked and beheld the sharp crag was ablaze and burning, and yet the peak was not consumed. Shemoth, Exodus 3:2. Moses said, I would prefer to go in a different direction, changing my approach because I want to inspect and understand this empowering and enormously important sight, contemplating the incombustible nature of the sharp rocky crag. Shemoth, Exodus 3:3. When Yahweh saw that he had turned to inspect what he had seen, God called out to him, offering him a welcoming invitation to meet from the midst of the sharp rocky crag, saying, Moses, Moses. So he said, Behold, it's me. Shemoth, Exodus 3:4. Then he said, Do not come near this place. If you wouldn't mind, detach your sandals from upon your feet, because indeed this site which you are presently standing upon is set apart and very special ground. Shemoth, Exodus 3:5, Then he said, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Jacob. However, Moses concealed his presence because he was too awestruck to look at God. Shemoth, Exodus 3:6. Yahweh said, I have seen the affliction and harassment of my people who are in the crucibles of political and religious oppression in Miraim. I have heard their distressing cry as a result of those who are exploiting and oppressing them. Indeed, I am aware of their suffering. Shemoth, Exodus 3:7. Therefore, I have descended, coming down from a much higher place, to deliver them from the influence of the subjugating tyrants in Miraim, and to lift them up out of that country, taking them to a good and pleasing, beneficial and spacious, realm, to a land 630 flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite. Shemoth, Exodus 3:8. So, behold, the wailing cry of despair from the children of Israel has come to me. I have seen the starvation rations and oppressive conditions with which the political and religious despots in Miraim are imprisoning them. Shemoth, Exodus 3:9. As a result, let's go, because I want to extend myself through you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of this highly questionable affliction and oppression in Miraim. Shemoth, Exodus 3:10. Our reintroduction to Yahweh through Midian is relevant because it demonstrates how desirous God is to remove his people from the caustic and controlling, degrading and incapacitating influence of human governance and institutionalized religion, as well as the stratified and oppressive nature of caste systems and slavery. En route to this objective, God's approach would be contrary to that of empires and nations. He didn't deploy an army, didn't dispatch a navy, didn't send in his vast array of heavenly envoys, didn't deploy diplomats to negotiate a treaty, didn't impose economic sanctions or offer monetary incentives to those he knew coveted them. Yahweh would even forego using a popular or imposing, articulate or charismatic, even an influential or prestigious individual, but, instead, solicited the help of a senior citizen with a scandalous reputation to liberate his children from religious and governmental influences in the most powerful nation on earth. There is God's way and man's approach, and seldom do they share anything in common. In light of this, why would we expect God to change tactics at this late date? Why solicit the assistance of more than one man? Why choose someone with impressive 631 credentials? Why not pursue a person in a similar situation and then engage with him to save Israel, even if it is now from themselves? We turn to this section of Shemoth, names, because we were searching to understand the Midian reference in Yasha'yah 9-5. Little did we expect that it would shed some interesting light on how God goes about choosing those who serve his children. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and come out with the children of Israel, bringing them out of religious and political oppression in Miraim? 3:11. So he said, Because I will be with you. This is the sign and proof that I have sent you, by you having brought out the family from Miraim, the crucibles of affliction and oppression, you will work with God upon this mountain. Shemoth, Exodus 3:12. This mountain where the Torah was revealed is in Midian. Every word of this speaks to us because it is all relevant today. It is evident that Yahweh wanted to work with someone who knew the Egyptians and who was opposed to their politics, religion, military, and economic system. Having experienced these things and having left them because he disliked them served as Moses' credentials and explain why he was chosen. And I suspect that it humored the Almighty to communicate his name and word through an individual with questionable diction. Having left corporate management, religion, patriotism, and politics, I can picture myself in Moses' situation. I understand Yahweh's aversion to these things. His position resonates with me, as I'm sure it did with him. And while I wasn't afforded the opportunity to climb the desolate crags of Korib, there wasn't any reason to do so. 632. Not now that we find Yahweh ready and willing to talk to us through the words of the Torah written here on this mountain. And among them, we discover Yahweh's name and learn to properly pronounce it. Then Moses, the one who draws us away from human oppression, said to God, Now look, if I go to the children of Israel, and I say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? Shemoth, Exodus 3:13. God responded to Moses, I am, Yasha'yah, who, Asher, I am, Yasha'yah. Then he said, This is what you should say to the children of Israel, I exist has sent me to you. Shemoth, Exodus 3:14. In addition, God said to Moses, This is what you should actually and continually say to the children of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, God of Abraham, God of Yitzchak, and God of Jacob, sent me to you. This is my name forever, throughout all time. And this is my way of being known and remembered in every place, era, and generation. Shemoth, Exodus 3:15. Moses' mission would include introducing Yahowah by name to his people, liberating the children of Israel from religious and political oppression, listening to God, and then sharing what he had learned verbally and in writing. Our mission today is to reintroduce Yahowah to his people, encourage Israelites to flee religious and political influences, and then, after translating what God conveyed through his prophets, share what we have learned verbally and in writing. This mission has led us to the precipice of what Yasha'yah is about to reveal, to the same mountain, and then on to the promised land. However, there have been obstacles to overcome. For the past 2,000 years, the 633 world has been wrong about Yasha'yah 9-6-7, even though it is among the most quoted of all prophecies. It is not predictive of the mythical misnomer Jesus Christ but, instead, descriptive of Daud, more commonly known as King David. Rather than predict the ludicrous notion of the birth of God, rather than justify a Gentile religion, rather than describe the misnomer Jesus, rather than validate a New Testament, Isaiah 9:6-7 obliterates everything Christians believe. It is devastating to Judaism as well because everything we are about to hear is in conflict with what Jews have been led to believe about God and man, particularly this man. Truth be told, Yahweh can learn far more from Daud than from anyone else. It is why we possess so much of what he wrote, all in the original language, all marvelously preserved, all easily verified. There were more psalm scrolls found in the caves above the Dead Sea than any other. Before we rejoin the prophecy, there are some things I'd like to share. First, Yasha'yah, Isaiah 9:6 and 9-7 telescope time in traditional Hebrew fashion, presenting both past and future events. The narrative plays out over a period of 3,000 years. And since the past, present, and future are seen as one integrated whole from God's perspective, Yasha'yah 9-6 and 9-7 should never have been broken apart and presented as two distinct thoughts. Second, in the transition from Hebrew to English, we must choose the tense that most accurately reflects the time frame being discussed. In this regard, we should pay especially close attention to the perfect or imperfect conjugations which speak of things that are either completed during a period of time or open-ended and continuous. 634 Third, and this is exceedingly important in this prophecy, in the Hebrew language adjectives and adverbs follow their respective nouns and verbs. However, since English grammar uses the opposite approach, the translation needs to reflect this arrangement to be accurate. For example, just because it is Ruach Kodesh in Hebrew, does not mean that we should write Spirit set apart in our translations. As it relates to the following, Yasha'yah wrote, Counselor who is brilliant and insightful, not wonderful, Counselor. Similarly, the prophet spoke of a valiant and heroic defender of God, not Almighty God. Further, he said that he would be an eternal witness providing enduring testimony for the Father, rather than inferring the disjointed notion, that he was both the Son and the everlasting Father. Fourth, Shem is more than a name in that it also conveys an individual's renown and reputation. I share this because there is only one actual name among the 7 historic and 7 prophetic portrayals of this individual's nature and value, and that is Daud. Therefore, what follows is a profoundly different, and yet more accurate presentation of Yasha'yah 9-6 and 9-7 than any you have seen before. The opening stanza may be the most memorable ever spoken. For indeed, because truly, emphasizing this statement while revealing an important contrast, a child, Yeled, a boy, the male offspring of parents, an infant who grows up to become a young man, a descendant, from Yelod, is brought forth, was born, Yelod, was conceived and brought into view through a woman impregnated by the father of the child, Paul perfect passive, before us, La'anakyu, for and among us, a son, Ben, a male descendant, the masculine offspring of a mother and father, was given, provided, and bestowed. Nathan, was 635 produced and placed at a point in time, appointed and offered, brought and devoted, Nephil perfect passive, concerning us, La'anakyu, on our behalf, regarding our approach. The opportunity to learn what can be known about how to engage and endure in addition to the government, Wa Misra, the dominion and sovereignty to lead, from my, to ponder the implications of Sarah, having the power to exert oneself, to contend, to persist and to persevere, was and will be, Wahaya, has been, continues to be, and will actually exist with ongoing implications, Kal imperfect active, literally with unfolding consequences over time, on, al, upon, his shoulder, Shechem Hu. His back based upon a continued succession of events transpiring upon his ridgeline and predicated upon the eagerness in which he pursued his calling early in his life. His reputation and renown, Washem Hu, his personal and proper designation and name, has been read and recited as, Kara, was for a time invited and summoned as, called out and welcomed as, met with and proclaimed as, even may be read aloud and announced as, Kal perfect, from one Kesser, a counselor providing valuable advice, Yats, one who offers direction and thought-provoking guidance to deliberate, an analyst who proposes and reveals the purpose of the plan. A mentor who speaks out and urges those who listen to follow his guidance and thinking because it is thoughtful and reasonable, who is astoundingly brilliant and amazingly insightful, Pele, who is marvelous, wonderful, and distinguished, surpassing all others, set apart and separating, influential and fantastic, as well as prophetic, a valiant and heroic individual with a prominent military and political standing in the community, the most courageous and capable man, Yahowah, a powerful person who prevails. A mighty 636 warrior, brave and strong soldier, a capable and proven defender, a champion confirming the influence and strengthening nature, of God, of the Almighty, an eternal witness providing restoring testimony, an observant and meticulous individual providing everlasting evidence from long ago, sharing proof which is re-establishing, an eyewitness back in time conveying and memorializing information regarding the perpetual and continued existence, for the father, of the progenitor. Originator and male caregiver and provider, the leader who conveys the authorized position, Hasar, the ruler of the government who acts and delivers, who has the authority and power to prevail with regard to representing the official stance on, from one Kesser, on reconciliation and restoration leading to salvation, Shalom, on the blessings of restitution and redemption, on peace and prosperity, on satisfaction and favoritism, on association and friendship, regarding health and prosperity, on safety and being complete, regarding lacking nothing, on contentment, tranquility, and companionship in the relationship, Yasha'yah, Isaiah 9:6, tremendously increasing, abundantly, greatly, and extensively, plentifully and totally, to the largest extent possible on the scale of spatial dimensions amplifying and growing, the ability to learn about and respond to, providing the information and imparting the instruction learned as a student, teaching how to become familiar with the guidance needed to accept, diligently studying and then explaining the pattern and plan, as a student eager to learn is taught by another, having received clear and compelling revelations so as to be prepared to intelligently convey, contracted from Lamed, to teach and learn, gaining information through instruction and then responding appropriately to, the means to engage and endure. To be liberated and empowered, Ha-Misra, the person being written about choosing to understand by questioning the who, what, where, why, when, and how of that which 637 pertains to persisting and persevering, of being set free and being empowered, a compound of my, to probe and question Sarah, the means to engage and endure, to contend, to be liberated, and to be empowered. As a result of this approach, voila, then adding these things together, collectively, therefore and accordingly, facilitating this direction, reconciliation and restoration, complete satisfaction and total contentment, Shalom, the blessings of an entirely favorable circumstance leading to overwhelming prosperity, friendship, and affection, tranquility and companionship, safety and salvation from harm's way, as well as deliverance, resulting in a free, healthy, and satisfying relationship, will be without end. Ein K's, will never cease or be negated, and are unbounded and limitless, without constraint, upon the throne, Al-Kais, before the seat of honor in association with the high status of the dignified and empowering garment, the source of power adorning and covering the royal authority, of Daud, the beloved. As well as, in addition, upon his kingdom through his considered advice and counsel, Al-Mamlakahu, as a result of his sovereign authority and reign over his realm, and on account of his thoughtful guidance and assistance, from Malak, to reign by providing considered and intelligent advice and instruction, directions and counsel, so as to be prepared and established by it, La Quneth High, authenticated and authorized by it, to be prepared and become steadfast, ready, and supported through it. Deciding and concluding to approach regarding it, hyphal infinitive construct, whereby the object is engaged by the subject, becoming akin to a secondary subject irrespective of time or place, in the feminine singular and thus addressing Mamlaka, and, to be restored and sustained by him, while Asarhu, to be renewed and upheld through him, to be strengthened and supported by it, and to make it safe and secure. Refreshing it with the most favorable and nourishing 638 sustenance, it is masculine in one Kesser and thus refers to Daud or to his Kais, seat of honor versus feminine in the mount, addressing the kingdom, with the means to exercise good judgment, and justly resolve disputes, Bar Mishpat, as part of a plan to decide, as a prescription based upon an official proclamation depicting how the judge will determine each case, remaining completely fair and yet consistent, to ponder the implications of Shafot, deciding, judging, being discriminating, and resolving controversies, by, Wabar, also with, being right, Zardaka, being correct, fair, and just, acquitting and vindicating, honest and blameless, innocent and in full accord with the standard, from then to now, minota, beginning congruent with the events being depicted, right now and thus coinciding with this narration, simultaneous with this rational declaration, and forevermore, wa ad olam, throughout all time, eternally. The deep devotion and passion, kina, the zeal and fervor for exclusivity, strong desire to accomplish something special, and ardent love and jealousy, of Yahowah, Yahowah, an accurate transliteration of the name of Eloah, God guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence and our Shalom, reconciliation, of the vast array of spiritual implements, Zaba, of the host of heavenly messengers and envoys, has consistently engaged to make this happen, Asajoth has caused this to continuously occur, having always done what was required, such that he will act accordingly to accomplish this, fashioning this result, continuing to perform in this way, Kalimperfect active with this as feminine, meaning Yahowah is actually engaging such that we can be continuously right. Yasha'yah, Isaiah 9:7. At the time of this writing, circa 740 BCE, the declaration, a child was born before us would naturally have pertained to David. He was not only conceived 639 and born in the normal fashion, in the perfect conjugation, his birth is presented as a completed action, occurring in the past. When considering the statement, a son was given concerning us, we should turn our attention to the one man deserving of Yahowah's remarkable statement, I am his father and he is my son. He is also the one individual who offered to fulfill Pesach and Matzah, providing his people with the gift of salvation. Yahowah placed the governance of Israel on Daud's shoulder. He chose him to shepherd his people, anointed him Mashiach to demonstrate his authorization, and then appointed him Melech. And since the verb, hire, was scribed in the imperfect, what had been done would continue throughout time. Daud is the only man who once was and again will be king. Those who have examined his Mizmor know that Daud is the ultimate counselor providing valuable advice. He was obviously astoundingly brilliant and amazingly insightful. When it comes to providing advice and guidance, Daud is in a class by himself. Yahowah does not mean Almighty, and thus his name was not Almighty God as Christians want the faithful to believe. This deception should be enough to make the rational reject religion. Even when considering all of the mythos associated with his caricature, Jesus was never presented as a Yahowah, a valiant and heroic individual with a prominent military and political standing in the community, who was devoted to defending God's people. Daud was, however, the most courageous and capable man of God. It began with the defeat of a rather large Philistine and will continue with the eradication of antagonistic Gentiles. Jews understand the implications of this prophecy, making it obvious for them why they could not accept Jesus as the Messiah, much less as the fulfillment of this proclamation. 640 But what God's people do not recognize is that Daud's most courageous act was the fulfillment of Passover and unyeasted bread. After a torturous death, he ventured into hell to redeem his people. Unlike Daud, who wrote vociferously about the Mishpat, way to resolve disputes and achieve Shalom, reconciliation, and then endured the Mikra to provide it, the mythical Jesus didn't have much to say about the means Yahowah provided to fulfill the covenant's promises. By contrast, Daud explained exactly what he would endure to save his people, doing so 1,000 years in advance of it occurring. He became an eternal witness providing restoring testimony on behalf of the Father. That said, no man is the eternal Father, making the Christian translation inaccurate. At issue is Ed, whose primary definition reads just as I have rendered it, an eternal witness providing restoring testimony. Ed speaks of an observant and thorough individual providing everlasting evidence from long ago. And Ed shares proof which is restoring. He is an eyewitness back in time conveying and memorializing information regarding the perpetual and continued existence of God. In all of human history, no leader was as authorized by God as Daud. He was specifically chosen, anointed 3 times, and appointed king, not once but twice. He is afforded every title and depiction of consequence, from Ben to Bikor, from Mashiach to Melech, from Ra to Zarawah, called Yahowah to Zadok, and is even depicted as the branch of prophet, and the hand of God. And it is fair to say that Daud epitomized Shalom, reconciliation. By serving as the Passover lamb, Daud opened the door to life. With his soul fulfilling unyeasted bread, Daud perfected his people by carrying their guilt into Shaul, and depositing it there. As Yahowah's firstborn, 641 Daud was restored into fellowship with his father on firstborn children, showing us the way home. And for having done so, Daud was enriched and empowered, during the promise of 7. This is why we herald his return during trumpets, knowing that Daud will provide Shalom during the day of reconciliation. Having made Shalom with God, Daud's seat of authority will endure forever during the eternal celebration of shelters as the covenant family camps out with Yahowah in perfect Shalom. As a result, those who listen and respond to Daud's songs are Shalom, reconciled and satisfied Ein Kays, beyond limitation. We are Kun, prepared and established, Sard, restored and sustained, bar mishpat, having exercised good judgment about the means to justly resolve the disputes which would otherwise separate us from Yah. And this is because Daud was Tzaddik, right regarding Yahowah, so our relationship will endure minota, from then to now wa'ad olam, and forevermore. This prophetic portrayal concludes with Yahowah acknowledging that he is personally and consistently engaged throughout time to make this happen because of his kaya, deep devotion and passion, his strong desire to accomplish something special as a result of his love for Daud, the beloved. Considering that it was Yah's kina, fervor for exclusivity and ardent love which lies at the heart of his relationship with his son, David is the only individual who embodies each aspect of this prophetic statement. Then to confirm the obvious, he is named at the conclusion of the prophecy. All of us at times forget a name or address someone by the wrong name, but we never do so with our own children. There is no possibility that God asked his prophet to write David if he meant this to apply to someone else. 642 May I ask anyone still lost in religion, if this was about baby Jesus, why did Yahowah dispatch this statement to Israel, to the very people the Christian Jesus allegedly rejected? If we are to believe that this was about Christianity, why was the gift allotted to Jews? Yahowah, an accurate transliteration of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence and our shalom, restoration, dispatched, shalach, reached out by sending out, kal perfect, the word, dabar, the message and statement, this account and promise, unto, var, among and within, with regard to because of his association with, Yaakov, Yitzchak's son, the father of Yisrael, to dig in his heels and impact his brother as a result of the consequence of his footsteps, and so, it has been allotted to, Naphal, it has fallen upon and been distributed among, Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, from Shesera. Yasha'yah, liberation and salvation are from Yah, Isaiah 9:8. I feel sorry for father and son. This prophecy is such a wonderful gift to all of us, and yet for thousands of years, it has been used to validate a hateful religion while besmirching a loving relationship. This prophecy is a love story, a genuine treasure.